Did you know that, across the arc of their extraordinary journeys, some of the most influential Black R&B icons carried a story the spotlight never revealed? They were the architects of melodies that taught generations how to feel, how to forgive, how to fall in love, voices that seemed fearless under the stage lights. Yet beyond the applause and shimmering stages, there were chapters of their lives written in quiet ink. Behind the brilliance of fame, they navigated a private landscape shaped by expectation, identity, and the silent weight of being misunderstood. These 15 artists gave the world timeless anthems of devotion and vulnerability, but in their personal worlds, parts of their authentic selves remained carefully guarded. In an era when acceptance was far from guaranteed, they chose resilience over revelation, artistry over explanation. Some left this world with questions still lingering in the air, stories whispered but never fully told. Their legacy, however, is not defined by secrecy, but by courage, the strength to create beauty even when the world was not always ready to embrace every shade of who they truly were. These revelations are more than unexpected twists. They illuminate the quiet negotiations that many music icons have had to make in order to preserve their artistry and public image. Behind the chart-topping hits and standing ovations often stood difficult choices, private compromises, and the constant balancing act between authenticity and expectation. Their journeys are not simply footnotes in music history, they mirror the broader cost of visibility in a world that has not always embraced difference with open arms. Fame can amplify a voice, yet it can also place boundaries around the person behind it. In today's video, we step beyond the stage lights to thoughtfully examine these lesser-known chapters, stories of resilience, identity, and the complex human experience behind legendary success. If you're curious to discover more about the lives and legacies of these remarkable artists, make sure to subscribe and like the video so you won't miss what's next. And we truly value your perspective. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for being here and for exploring these meaningful conversations with us. Born in 1,935 inches, Gilmer, Texas, Johnny Mathis would grow to become one of the most enduring and refined tenor voices in American popular music. Raised in modest circumstances, he discovered early on that his gifts extended beyond the ordinary. His voice carried a rare warmth, and his athletic ability set him apart among his peers. When his family relocated to San Francisco, that move became a turning point. There, he received formal training in both music and sports, developing discipline in the classroom and on the field, even drawing attention as a potential candidate for the U.S. Olympic track team. Yet at a crossroads that would define his destiny, Mathis chose melody over medals. He stepped away from the promise of athletic acclaim and leaned fully into the power of song, a decision that reshaped not only his own life, but also the emotional soundtrack of generations. His choice echoed far beyond personal ambition. It opened a path that would influence pop and R&B music for decades, proving that sometimes the quietest calling carries the greatest resonance. With his velvety tenor and effortlessly polished phrasing, Johnny Mathis rose swiftly into a league of his own. Ballads such as Misty, Chances Are, and I Can't Say No became more than radio favorites. They evolved into emotional landmarks for listeners around the world. Each note seemed to float with precision, each lyric delivered with a sincerity that felt both intimate and timeless. These recordings did more than top charts. They carved his name into the foundation of modern popular music. With over 350 million records sold globally, his success positioned him among the best-selling artists of the 20th century. Draped in tailored elegance, wearing a composed smile and projecting a voice steeped in romance, he became an emblem of sophistication. Audiences weren't simply drawn to his sound, they were enveloped by it, captivated by an aura that blended grace, mystery, and enduring charm. To many admirers, especially women who felt seen in the tenderness of his lyrics, Johnny Mathis embodied the very image of romantic perfection. His voice seemed to articulate emotions others struggled to express, and that aura of sincerity made him an almost mythic figure in popular culture. Yet behind the immaculate tailoring and composed stage presence existed a far more intricate human story, one shaped by privacy, caution, and the unspoken pressures of the era. In 1982, during a rare and candid interview, Mathis offered a remark that reverberated far beyond the printed page. "Homosexuality is a lifestyle I am familiar with." Presented in a magazine without full context, the line ignited widespread speculation and immediate public debate. Headlines magnified the moment, often stripping nuance from his words, and what may have been intended as reflection became a cultural flashpoint. The reaction revealed as much about the social climate of the time as it did about the artist himself, illustrating how a single sentence, detached from its depth, can eclipse decades of artistry and redefine the narrative around a celebrated life. However, after that brief and startling moment, Johnny Mathis chose not to revisit the subject, gently redirecting attention back to his music as though the remark had dissolved into the background. The sudden shift created an echo of unanswered questions, and from that point forward, he guarded his private world with remarkable discipline. He rarely courted headlines, seldom appeared at high-profile gatherings, and maintained a careful distance from the spectacle often associated with celebrity culture. He neither retracted his words nor expanded upon them, allowing ambiguity to linger in the space between statement and silence. For many observers, that quiet became meaningful in itself. A protective veil drawn around a life lived under constant scrutiny. In an era when public perception could define or derail a career, restraint may have felt like survival. His silence was interpreted by some as strategy, by others as self-preservation, and perhaps even as a personal negotiation with expectations that were not easily reconciled. In the end, the mystery did not diminish his artistry. If anything, it underscored the complexity of navigating fame while safeguarding one's inner truth. In an era when conversations around identity were often clouded by misunderstanding and social resistance, Johnny Mathis chose a path of discretion, carefully safeguarding both his personal world and the career he had built with such devotion. The cultural climate of the time offered little room for nuance, and visibility could come at a significant cost. Within that landscape, privacy was not merely preference, it was protection. As years passed, songs like Misty and Chances Are began to shimmer with new interpretations. Listeners revisited familiar lyrics and discovered subtle layers beneath the surface tones of longing, devotion, and vulnerability that seemed to transcend conventional narratives. What once felt like simple romance now carried a quiet depth, as if an unseen story moved gently between the lines. This ambiguity did not weaken his legacy, it enriched it. The space between what was sung and what was unsaid invited reflection, allowing audiences to project their own experiences onto his music. In that delicate balance of revelation and restraint, his artistry gained an added dimension, mysterious, intimate, and timeless. Fans were left to wonder whether the most powerful love stories are sometimes those spoken softly, woven into melody rather than declared aloud. His ballads were never confined to simple romance. In the hands of Johnny Mathis, they became quiet meditations on yearning, devotion, and emotions too delicate or too complicated to be declared outright. Each sustained note carried the weight of something hovering just beyond language, as though the truest confessions were hidden between the verses rather than within them. What listeners heard as tenderness often held an undercurrent of restraint, a subtle tension between revelation and reserve. Though he was never swept into sensational controversies, his composure and measured privacy mirrored the realities of his time. For a black artist moving fluidly between jazz, pop, and R&B during the 1950s and 1960s, endurance itself was a triumph. The industry was layered with visible and invisible barriers, and simply maintaining artistic control required extraordinary poise. In that climate, openness about deeply personal matters could have altered the trajectory of everything he had painstakingly built. Survival, in many ways, demanded silence. And so his legacy stands not only as a testament to vocal brilliance, but also to quiet resilience. Beneath the polished performances and timeless recordings lay a story shaped by context, caution, and courage, the kind that does not always announce itself loudly, but resonates steadily through decades of music that still speaks to hearts willing to listen closely. And so, Johnny Mathis embraced discretion as a quiet companion, allowing melody to articulate what biography never fully would. Rather than placing his private world on display, he entrusted his truths to harmony and phrasing, letting each performance carry emotions too intricate for headlines. In doing so, he transformed silence into artistry, proving that sometimes the most profound narratives are those carried on a single sustained note. Today, he is honored as a towering figure in pop and R&B, a vocalist whose smooth timbre once seemed to suspend time itself. His recordings continue to drift through generations, polished yet intimate, grand yet deeply personal. The applause, the accolades, the enduring sales figures, these mark the visible summit of a remarkable career. Yet beyond the celebrated milestones lies a more contemplative dimension, a life lived with careful boundaries, shaped by context and quiet endurance. The music remains vivid and eternal, echoing across decades, while the innermost chapters of his journey stay softly veiled. In that delicate balance between revelation and restraint, the essence of his story endures not as scandal or spectacle, but as a lingering mystery woven gently into the fabric of timeless song. Born in 1932 inches, Mon, Georgia, Richard Wayne Penniman, later known to the world as Little Richard, would rise to become one of the most electrifying forces in 20th century music. Raised within a deeply religious household, he grew up navigating the tension between expectation and self-expression, wrestling quietly with questions of identity long before the world knew his name. Those early inner conflicts would shape not only his character, but the intensity that later erupted in his art. From the very beginning of his career, he defied convention. With flamboyant suits, a towering pompadour, and an energy that seemed barely containable, he didn't simply step onto a stage, he ignited it. His voice, raw yet controlled, thundered through concert halls with a spirit that felt both rebellious and joyful. In an era hungry for change, he became a catalyst, helping to carve the sound and attitude of rock and roll into cultural history. Little Richard was more than a performer. He was a phenomenon. His presence challenged norms, blurred boundaries, and expanded what popular music could look and sound like. Behind the glitter and the explosive piano rhythms, however, lay a complex individual navigating faith, fame, and self-understanding, an artist whose brilliance was matched only by the depth of his personal journey. Classics like Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, and Good Golly Miss Molly were not merely chart successes, they detonated a cultural shift that echoed across an entire century. With pounding piano riffs and a voice that felt like lightning striking rhythm, Little Richard didn't just participate in rock and roll, he accelerated it. His sound tore through convention, fusing gospel fire with raw momentum, and in doing so, he helped redefine what popular music could dare to become. His fearless artistry left a visible imprint on icons such as Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and Prince, artists who would carry fragments of his daring spirit into new eras. He shattered stylistic barriers, challenged social norms, and carved a path where sound and spectacle merged into something revolutionary. Yet behind the glittering suits and electrifying performances stood a man navigating a far more intimate terrain. Beneath the thunderous applause lay a profound inner dialogue, particularly surrounding identity and self-understanding. The same intensity that fueled his stage presence also reflected a private struggle shaped by faith, expectation, and the complexities of living authentically in a time that offered limited space for nuance. In that contrast between public explosion and private contemplation, the legend of Little Richard gains an added depth, one that speaks not only of innovation, but of resilience. Although Little Richard stood on stage as a blazing emblem of audacity, freedom, and dazzling self-expression, the world beyond the spotlight was far more complex. The same man who commanded pianos like a force of nature often wrestled quietly with questions that applause could not silence. Behind the sequins and soaring vocals existed a deeply human tension, an internal dialogue shaped by faith, upbringing, and the era's rigid expectations. In 1995, he openly described himself as bisexual in a public conversation, a statement that rippled across media outlets and sparked renewed attention. Yet not long after, he distanced himself from that declaration, shifting his language in ways that left observers puzzled. This apparent contradiction did not signal inconsistency as much as it revealed an ongoing inner negotiation between personal truth and the powerful frameworks of family tradition, religious conviction, and industry norms. His journey reflected the complexity of living at the crossroads of identity and influence. For someone raised within strict spiritual structures and later positioned as a cultural lightning rod, reconciling self-perception with public image was no simple task. The tension between expression and restraint became part of his larger story, adding depth to a legacy already defined by transformation and bold innovation. In that fragile space between affirmation and retreat, we glimpse not confusion, but the enduring human effort to harmonize who we are with the world we inhabit. Growing up in a household deeply rooted in church tradition, Little Richard was shaped by sermons, hymns, and uncompromising doctrines that defined clear lines around identity and expression. The sanctuary gave him rhythm, discipline, and a foundation steeped in gospel intensity, but it also enforced rigid expectations about gender and personal conduct. In that duality, the church became both his first stage and his earliest source of inner conflict. As a teenager, after a painful confrontation at home that rejected his distinct personality, he left to carve his own path. The departure was more than physical. It marked the beginning of a lifelong negotiation between inheritance and individuality. Pressured by family standards and societal norms, he discovered that the only space expansive enough to contain his complexity was music itself. On stage, he transformed tension into thunder. Through pounding piano keys and fearless self-expression, he dismantled invisible walls and reimagined what performance could embody. What he could not safely articulate in conversation, he projected through sound and spectacle. In doing so, he didn't merely entertain, he shifted cultural currents, opening doors for future generations to explore creativity with fewer constraints. His authenticity, expressed through rhythm rather than rhetoric, became a catalyst for profound change in contemporary music. Yet the liberation that radiated from the stage lights often stood in sharp contrast to the solitude that followed when the curtains closed. Little Richard could command arenas with fearless charisma, but beyond the spotlight he navigated a far more fragile terrain. In an era when public image could determine survival, the possibility of openly defining his identity carried risks that felt seismic. The fear of losing everything he had built was not abstract, it was a constant shadow. At different moments in his life, he spoke in dramatically different tones about sexuality. There were periods when he echoed the language of condemnation shaped by his religious upbringing, describing certain identities as sinful. At other times, he acknowledged his own unconventional spirit, embracing the flamboyance and complexity that had always defined him. These apparent reversals puzzled observers, yet they also exposed the intense crosscurrents pulling at him from faith, family, cultural expectations, and an industry wary of disruption. What seemed like contradiction may instead have been a reflection of internal turbulence. He stood at the intersection of belief and self-expression, caught between inherited doctrine and personal truth. The public saw shifting statements. Behind them was a human being negotiating survival within a society still learning how to hold nuance. In that tension between proclamation and retreat, we glimpse not inconsistency, but the profound weight of stigma pressing from every direction. As a groundbreaking black performer in an era marked by entrenched racial segregation and cultural resistance, Little Richard understood that visibility came with amplified scrutiny. The stage offered him a throne, but society imposed invisible ceilings. In such a climate, openly defining every facet of his identity was not merely a personal decision, it was a seismic risk that could have reshaped his entire trajectory. The industry he helped electrify was not always prepared to embrace complexity beyond the music itself. He recognized the consequences of defying entrenched norms, both within broader society and within the structures of the entertainment world. Yet even amid those constraints, he carved out a space of flamboyant self-expression that radiated confidence and daring. Through fashion, performance, and unapologetic artistry, he projected a version of freedom that challenged expectations without always naming them directly. Though inner conflicts and personal hardships followed him across decades, they did not eclipse his impact. His sound shattered boundaries, his presence redefined performance, and his influence continues to ripple through generations of artists who draw from the trail he blazed. Whatever complexities lay beneath the surface, his cultural imprint remains undeniable, a testament to the power of creativity to transcend limitation and reshape the rhythm of history. So powerful was his presence that the Beatles once sought his guidance on commanding a stage, studying the very electricity that made audiences erupt. James Brown openly drew inspiration from his intensity, absorbing the fusion of rhythm and spectacle that Little Richard had perfected. Prince echoed his flamboyance and fearless theatricality, while David Bowie acknowledged him as a pioneer who challenged and expanded gender expression within popular music. His influence was not subtle, it was foundational. When he passed away in 2020 at the age of 87, the world paused to honor a figure who had altered the trajectory of modern sound. Tributes poured in, not merely remembering a performer, but celebrating a cultural force. He was widely hailed as one of the principal architects of rock and roll, a visionary who fused gospel fire, rhythm, rebellion, and glamour into something revolutionary. Though his life carried layers of complexity, his artistic footprint is unmistakable. The piano riffs still crackle with urgency, the vocals still pulse with fearless vitality, and the image of that towering pompadour remains etched into the mythology of music history. His legacy is not confined to records sold or stages conquered. It lives on in every artist who dares to bend convention and amplify individuality through sound. Yet beyond the thunder of piano keys and the glittering spectacle, Little Richard left another, quieter imprint on history. Long before conversations about identity became more open, his very presence on stage, bold, theatrical, unapologetically unconventional, expanded what was imaginable for countless individuals who felt different from the norms surrounding them. Even if he never formally claimed that role, the space he created through style, sound, and sheer audacity became a silent doorway for others seeking visibility. His life, therefore, was never only about music. It was also a narrative of courage layered with contradiction, a journey shaped by faith, expectation, ambition, and the enduring human search for alignment between inner truth and outer acceptance. The tension he carried was not simply personal. It reflected a broader cultural moment in which authenticity often required negotiation rather than declaration. He blazed across stages like a comet, dazzling and transformative, altering the skyline of popular culture forever. Yet the freedom he embodied artistically did not always translate into personal ease. In that contrast lies the poignancy of his legacy, a brilliant flame that illuminated pathways for others, even while wrestling with the winds that sought to contain it.